Hey folks, this is Ben Yessel. How's it going? I'm gonna make a quick video here about um, kind of a little bit different topic here than I often do. Spike Lee and um, I guess you could say movies that tend to appeal to Afro-Americans, but one in particular, New Jack City. So again, this is a little bit um, different topic, and obviously one of the things that comes to mind for a lot of folks is something probably kind of humorous where you know, in the United States, growing up, it's very much the case that um, we had there's a number of different cultures, right? In the United States, we're all kind of just tons of them, and we're all kind of just every day experiencing different cultures in some form or another. But there often have been kind of historically the oldest cultures other than American Indians in the United States have been European cultures and African cultures. So white or black, and aside from American Indian, and then everybody else, I guess you could say Hispanics were also kind of here, but they're more in the Mexico and South and southern areas, and everybody else came later, the Asians and Indians and Arabs and everybody. But yeah, um, so that being said, if you were interested in any facet of Africa or Afro-American cultures or whatever or anything, and you're white, you know, it's like people took notice. They're like, oh, okay. Um, Lots of different opinions about that, and then vice versa for Afro-Americans if they took a lot of interest in European cultures. Somewhat. I think it was just that the more the humor side of all this is if you're a kind of a very proper church going, or often seen that way as very, suit and tie or straight arrow type personality. You're white, and you're interested in urban uh, African American culture, specifically, like the gangs and the stuff, and movies about that. And I think some folks when I was younger got a bit of a kick out of that. That I was interested in movies that were kind of more oriented toward black folks and stuff at times. Spike Lee is a very interesting film or a very interesting movie director in that regard. And I'll mention that stuff here in a sec. But part of the reason why I think that, especially in my early 20s, why I was a little bit curious about some of that stuff is because growing up, obviously, my family, my culture, most of the people I knew were white. And it was very white American suburbia type thing going on. My parents didn't really, the way they acted, the way that all my siblings acted, the way we all acted, the way we just all thought and were, it's very white America, right? Very much so. And so it was a different kind of culture. And I knew people that had some sort of connection with that more urban culture. And others that were black I knew were more church going and different. And that was fine. But for some of these rougher guys I knew more in junior high and high school. And believe me, some folks I remember were particularly more inner city ish in what they're like and if they're black. And this was even more the case in Lakewood and Tacoma, to especially Tacoma. University Place was and Fircrest and everything. So Selco more suburbs between these two bigger urban areas, especially Tacoma. And Tacoma and Lakewood have a very strong black cultures and more again the inner city type black cultures and stuff. And um, so yeah, I just was because I wasn't in that element so much. I've always kind of been curious about some things Um, but um, obviously, there's some things that go without saying regarding um, just ones when you think about the this kind of culture, this in the United States, inner city Afro-American culture. And it's not just there's an inner city culture that's kind of like more than just black, of course. It's many other people, um, but yeah, I mean, because I just wasn't part of that culture. I've been always like, you know, I didn't want to seem like a geeky guy, right? I didn't want to seem like, didn't want to seem like the whitest guy you knew, right? Didn't want to be a complete geek that way, or you know. But I really get a kick out of humor that's associated with white versus black mannerisms and stuff, and I always found it kind of humorous and whatever, other things like that too. But so getting into this movie, New Jack City, and also there's some other stuff that's I think I have to double check if it was a Spike Lee movie. I'm not sure. It felt like it was, but I've seen other Spike Lee movies, and I'll get into Spike Lee in just a bit. But so New Jack City has Wesley Snipes, and Wesley Snipes was in one of the Fugitive movies. It was in the second Fugitive movie. The first Fugitive movie, of course, had Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones as the two main guys. There's some other guys that sure. Um, Second Fugitive movie had Wesley Snipes and Tommy Lee Jones, and of course, as part of Tommy Lee Jones's U.S. Marshals gang, it was Joe Pantoliano. He's the other guy I knew. Everyone knows Joe Pantoliano from The Matrix, and also when he was younger, from Goonies and stuff. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off the topic here a little bit. But so this movie, New Jack City, has Wesley Snipes, and it has another guy, which I remember his name. He's kind of a rapper. It's not Ice Cube. He's a different guy. He's slimmer. I'm sure if I heard his name, his rap name, I'd know who he was. But it has this other guy that's pretty famous, and then it also has Chris Rock as a young man. He plays a role in there, kind of druggy type character, or guy who's trying to work for the cops. But anyway, and then there's some other folks I remember. Like there's the guy that was in Canadian Bacon who plays the mandatory black man, mandatory black man, and I can't remember his name. But he looks a little bit like the guy that was in Bill Cosby, Jamal. He was a teenage son, but a little bit like that, but he's a different guy. And then, again, some other guys that I'm trying to think of that I might recognize. But so that's some of the main actors in there, and a lot of the premise is obviously New Jack City is New York City. It's just the name for New York City. It's obviously New York City, or it's really big urban area. So think New York City definitely, but this could also certainly apply to Philadelphia and Baltimore and Washington D.C. and Chicago and Cleveland. A lot of cities that have really substantial, a lot of black folks, but also others as well, Mexican, white, a little bit. But the movie revolves around problems with drugs, and that's kind of the message. Is the overall message of the movie is that drugs are nasty, and they can make people into slaves of being a slave to drugs, and it can make people kill, make people rob, and all kinds of stuff, and just a dirty business. You hear that stuff in mafia movies. They weren't kidding. It really is dirty business. I mean, crack cocaine and heroin. I mean, when I was in junior high, I remember hearing this stuff in my health class, and it was very boring because I didn't do drugs and I wasn't planning on doing drugs. We went through all the different types of drugs and what they do to you, and it's like, yeah, this is messed up. So this is stuff that's obviously we're not talking about even this is beyond marijuana is kind of a different deal, but this is certainly beyond tobacco and alcohol. This is cocaine and methamphetamines and barbiturates and LSD and again, I mentioned heroin and also I don't know ecstasy and stuff, all that stuff. So it's just it messes everybody up. It just destroys lives. And Wesley Snipes' character is trying to basically control all the drug deals and control basically the drug flow to New York City or New Jack City, New Jack City, and it shows what kind of life he has. He has tons of money, and he's the business of it and how greedy he is has made him very cold. And there's some issues. There's some like wars with they have with Italian, like mafia, whatever type group in New York City. Well, New Jack City, right? Um, and this was from the early '90s when this movie came out. Um, and so here I am, like I'm just I don't know why. It's just you have to be in a certain mood to watch certain movies. That's the best way of putting it. Best way of putting it. Usually, if I want to see something that might be seen on like BET, so Juice is another movie like that, and has Omar Epps and Tupac Shakur and stuff. And similar but different. It's more oriented around the perspective of teenagers or young adults, certainly in the 14, 15 to 20-year-old or 20 something year old, younger 20 something year old, ballpark. But that was Juice, and that has to do with guns and stuff. And this is, New York City is drugs. And the feeling I had was often kind of, yeah, there's some things that really get to you about this movie. One of them is that some people are just really poor, and these drug lords, wherever they are, it doesn't have to be the United States, it could be definitely South America, Central America, Mexico. The drug lords prey on poor people, and they get poor people to be their workers, and it is really a wicked, evil kind of thing because everything associated with drugs is just evil, wrong, and it's addictive and it's terrible. And yeah, I mean, like I've always felt like it should be chocolate or cocoa beans, right? It should be, or maybe bananas. I don't know, but cocoa beans should be like Colombia's #1 export that way, rather than cocaine or something. But so you see the poor people getting victimized in various ways, depending on who it was. You see them preying also on women, girls, young women to be sex slaves and stuff, or whatever. And that's really nasty. They touch on that a little bit, and it's you also see how I don't want to say they do business, but it's like just yes, but like I don't. I'm sure there's a little bit of Hollywood in there, but one of the things that was really crystal clear, I think, is that if anybody ever gets involved with this stuff in real life, in any capacity, they could very well end up dead, very, very easily. And it's like with this kind of business, and whether it's mafias running it or like some other gangs running it or some other organizations in each city, there are essentially no friends. If there are, it's a really rare instance. Everybody's out for themselves. Whatever loyalty or structure you have, it's based on fear. And again, if there is any lasting structure, the mafia has a bit more of a structure to it. But yeah, and That it goes without saying that people get killed here and there still too. Sure. The reason why it's like this, people get killed and you have fights and you have whatever going on. It just again, it has to do with the nature of the business. There's tons of money to be made, sure, and it's addictive, and there's no charm in it, none. It's not like when you teach music lessons or when you compose and you're making some money from composition or when you're performing or that's my arena of music or whatever. If you're making money in musical endeavors or you're selling something like wood crafts or furniture, food or electronics or jewelry, whatever it is you're selling, if it's something, if it's things or services that help people to be happier and to have better lives, you know, cars, sure, houses, everything from big stuff to small stuff. If it actually is beneficial, there's a culture with each different type of business or service. There are all these different cultures uh, in each of these different kinds of occupations, and it's just it's the nature of the business. I know for certain that when it comes to things like windows and doors and glass, and also lumber, but building houses, 2x4s and stuff, and piping and all this stuff, and all the things that go into making a house. There's a construction culture, construction worker culture. Then there's the engineering culture. There's the architect culture, right? And there's the electrician, right? Electricians type cultures and plumbers and um, I just insulation guys and all these different kinds of aspects that go into a house. Right? All these different cultures that are involved. They're all positive cultures. All of them are positive. Some of them can be rougher, right? Obviously, if you're working in a steel mill, you're gonna have some tough and rough guys, and maybe it's just a little bit more, you know, um, as opposed to something like an art gallery or art studio where the paintings are for sale, but everybody, it's completely different, right? So, and these are things that I'm becoming more and more aware of in my life. Maybe I haven't thought about as much of that sort of thing as when I was younger, when I was having all these odd jobs and getting a feel for these different kinds of work cultures and different not in more entry level types of things, generally speaking, right? But I mean, I just can't emphasize this enough. The movie was more centered around how these drug guys prey on the kids, they prey upon poor people and elderly, and if the cops don't do anything, or if they just kind of pussyfoot around with laws, nothing will ever improve, right? These guys need to be dealt with. Sometimes they need to actually be shot, executed. But then there's a question of who's going to shoot them, and you know, these issues that get back to justice and law, obviously, and law enforcement and things. But it's just it's like these problems won't go away unless we are tougher on them. But when we say we're tougher on them, what do we mean? Well, we actually go after them, go after the bad guys, and if you put them in prison, you put them in prison for life, or you put them in prison for a long time, or you kill them if they're really bad. And, if you get these guys get out of jail or have light sentences because they're wealthy and they bribe people. I mean, it gets into all this stuff a little bit. But again, it really gets into somewhat of the nature of how drug lords operate and how the business of drug selling, buying and selling drugs, growing them first and then selling them. It's all dirty business. It all makes people worse. I could see something more realistic, a movie that's more like how things are in real life, how things are done in real life, whether it's in South America or the United States or wherever, Mexico, Central America, whatever. I could see a movie in real life. Oh, it's more real life ish. You might be thinking maybe Scarface or something like that with Al Pacino. Okay, yeah, that's another one. Different culture, right? Obviously Cuban, right? But in both cases, what happens? People get killed. Um, it makes people worse. Makes people animals, savage, terrible. And drugs are often things, the sorts of things that we don't always think about when it comes to a lot of plaguing problems in the world. I mean, I haven't thought about drugs really seriously for a while, but it's still a problem because once you get hooked on them, you get hooked on them. It's some drugs, it's almost impossible to stop, using them. So, yes, there is the black culture with this movie, but it's also interesting. It goes without saying, and this is like you know, for some reason I keep thinking and it's Spike Lee, Spike Jones or Spike Lee, and it's Spike. Was Spike. I don't know why my brain is not operating that way right now. The film director, his first name is Spike Lee. Yeah. The reason why a lot of people think that if you watch those movies, you ought to be black or you ought to at least be from the inner city. It has something to do with this sense of self-identity, which again is associated with watching BET, Black Entertainment Television, versus watching what's a, something that's not BET stuff, right? The Brady Bunch, right? The Brady Bunch, or something like that. Which is, maybe I could talk about more recent type sitcom or whatever, but okay, like Family Matters when in the 90s was a black, it was like Bill Cosby show, but the Cosby show, a lot of the people that watched both these shows were white. And so some shows, like, there's some shows that are more definitely black in their appeal and culture that I've heard of. I think Tyler Perry or something. I think I definitely know some other ones, but the idea that you should be black or you ought to be black or why are you watching this? You're white, kind of sentiment or this train of thought has to do with this sense of being a white American versus being a black American and what that tends to entail, right? How do you spend your time? But a lot of, whether it's coming from this group or this group or this group or whoever is saying this stuff about, oh, why are you watching this? This is it. This is different. This is it. Where it's coming from, it just goes without saying, any of us from any nationality, race, ethnicity, whatever, can watch or listening to anything that we have access to. George Clinton was, somebody I was listening to a few weeks ago. It's like, oh, this is a different kind of funk music. I'm not necessarily a complete newcomer to it because I've heard some songs. I haven't really thought about who wrote it, but this is very different, very inner city 70s drug using Afro-American kind of culture associated with George Clinton and the Funkadelics and it was different, right? I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was different. I like the difference. There's some things that were definitely rougher though than some of the more nicer funk groups I've known of, like Earth, Wind and Fire and Kool and the Gang and Heatwave and other guys like that. But again, it's just we have access to all this stuff. When you listen to music that's from certain cultures or you watch movies from certain cultures, it's great. It's awesome. You can kind of get a better feel of what's happening in that culture. And it just, again, it really is kind of humorous if you look at it because the inner city Afro-American culture is often aggressive, right? It's often, but, there's all the gang things going on, but it's also has a heart to it. You have the black churches and you have the families, and the kids are trying to just have a fun time playing, and that side, which I, the side that's softer and more humane and nicer, we don't always think about when it comes to the inner city. We think about the gangs and the rougher side, right? But Spike Lee, for instance, shows both sides, and he always has a moral to his movies. And it doesn't matter if you're white or black or Asian or Mexican. You can watch a Spike Lee movie, like, yeah, awesome. I mean, it's not like, if I were to, I don't like to argue with people when they say stuff. When I was younger and you hear something like that, usually you kind of laugh about it, and they would laugh about it too, because it's just the nature of different cultures and how we are and how we operate tend to operate, right? It's like one of the prime sources of humor. It's a funny thing. It always is funny comparing different countries and things. We all know it's not like everybody in a country is just one way. We know that, or but so there's always the us versus them, or there's the other, right? There's the other culture versus my culture, right? There's always the what do we have in common, what's different, and all that. But when I'm watching a Spike Lee movie, I think to myself, wow, I feel very white, quote unquote, compared to how people are acting in this movie, right? It's sure. But it's not just being white, it's also being, Mormon, it's also being conservative, it's also being, a child of the 80s and 90s, It's it's all that stuff that makes up my psyche. And I'm comparing it with how people are in the movie, and I'm like, you but see, the thing is, it's nice watching a movie with a different culture like that. In real life, if I go to downtown Seattle or something, and I'm just trying to not be nervous, right? Because there's a lot of big tough black guys, and I don't want to seem like sure, that's what everybody does, right? And to some degree or another, we always just like trying to put on a nice face and how's it going? And we try not to be nervous to anybody, just anybody who's black and big, because we don't want that other person feeling bad just for being a black person, whatever. But so it's nice to see movies where you get more familiar with the way things are in these cultures, so that when you're in real life, you're in this culture, or you have a bunch of guys who are black that just take note of what you're saying, or somehow they just come up to you, but you want to know if you're going to be in hot, you want to know if you're going to be okay, right? What's going on here? What's going to happen? Whether they're going to be friendly or not, or something else, So there's a lot of that goes on, I think, with seeing a movie and how that can prep you for real life. But it's how can I put this? So there's all kinds of reasons why I'll have a YouTube channels from like black folks and stuff. All kinds of reasons. I can't even think of. There's literally just an infinite number of reasons why I'll watch YouTube videos from every culture, right? But we're talking about Afro-American cultures specifically, not necessarily just African. There's African folks, sure. I'm talking about Afro-American in particular with this guy, with this video. And you watch these videos and you watch these movies so that you can, be more personable and nicer in real life, and also more streetwise. And so it's not, these movies are not just for black people, but they are, even though they maybe are primarily directed at black folks. I know that Spike Lee was making his movies for everybody. And I know that some of his movies are controversial, and there are some that are really, yeah. But I think his desire is to get people to think about this stuff, but not in a way that is not in a way that it makes you angry with other people from other cultures. Of course, he wants you to ultimately, it's about being a better person and about getting along with people better from other countries and other cultures. and other races and ethnicities and other socioeconomic backgrounds, and just stopping the hate, stopping the drugs, stopping the bad stuff. It's try to improve life for everyone, but it's also especially in the inner cities where things are really tough still for people. Anyway, leave me thoughts and comments below. Catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.